Продовжуємо роботу.
We continue work of the Ukrainian crisis medias, and now we'll discuss publication of the Anthology of Ukrainian writers of the Donbas Poroda. We have Mr. Serhiy Zhadan, writer and translator, member of the Editorial Board of the Anthology Poroda, Mr. Yuriy Bedryk, poet translator, Mr. Stanislav, Fedorchuk, project leader of the publication of the culture, chairman of the board, and Mykola Denigarov, who is coordinator of the project. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. We're happy to see you here. This presentation, for me, it's a good sign when we can speak about not just the idea, but about the publication, which is now in the print shop. We'll describe how we came across this idea, how we proceeded with it, and how we reached our first results. So our idea was not just create any publication characterizing Ukrainian literature in the east of Ukraine. Our idea was to give the voice to representatives of different generations of Ukrainian literature, to prevent a situation that each generation starts the history from itself. But we wanted to recollect and celebrate the previous generations and to promote the literature from the east of Ukraine who became actually refugees in their own country. I think that's a good thing to do, and this will be a rewarding project, very enriching for each Ukrainian. So the project is jointly implemented by Ukrainian People's Council from Donetsk and Luhansk regions. It unites representatives of the east of Ukraine who participated in Euromaidan, who are journalists, who are NGO activists, civic activists, who are writers, poets, etc. Those are people who had their very well-defined position even before the war. And the second participant of this project is Charity Foundation by Serhiy Zhadan, who took upon itself organizational part and provided all the negotiations with the stakeholders, etc. Probably it's the right moment to give the floor to Serhiy Zhadan. Serhiy Zhadan is one of the authors. That's why I will describe the unique nature of our publication myself. The book will comprise approximately 384 pages, and it will represent a lot of kinds of literature, poetry, prose, all sorts of stories, etc. And we are happy to mention, and it's our honor to represent that a foreword to this anthology was written by Professor Ivan Dzyuba, who is a famous Ukrainian literature studies scholar who is quite a respectful scholars, and I think he spent 6 weeks to master the materials, and I think you will enjoy his forward. We have Mr. Serhiy Zhadan, who is probably known to you. This is writer Mr. Andrei Kurkov, whom you know, and Mr. Volodymyr Rafienko, who started to write in Russian, and now he's writing Ukrainian. What was the objective of the anthology? We plan to publish 2,000 copies. 1,000 will go to the libraries, to charity foundations, to NGOs, and another 1,000 copies will go to free commercial use. 1,000 copies, is it much or not? In Roman Empire, there's was a good figure, and I think that even for today's Ukraine, this is a good figure too. And also we expect that maybe there will be second publications and third, etc. I would like to say a couple of words about the cover, about the picture which is on the cover. Petro Antip escaped from Horlivka in early days of the war, and this is his picture, skits and the Amazonian women, and I think that Petro Antip, who is an architect, a sculptor, a painter, and civic activist, I think he is he worth attention, and he will become even more famous in future. This shows the pictures of different authors represented in our anthology. We plan to present our anthology at the Publishers Forum. We have reached the agreement with the administration of the forum. We will have presentation, we will have discussion, and we will have round table devoted to important topics. Also, we will have a series of presentations of this book in several locations along the contact line, and then in 4 bigger cities in Kiev, Kharkiv, Dnipro, and Vinnytsia. If we find more money, we will extend the geography for presentations. The public discussion which we wish to launch with this anthology, the topic is Unannounced War, to hear Donbas. It will be about the role of a writer, about topics for writing, and the further path for the east of Ukraine. And this is the question, not for the writers only, but for the whole society, not just for the readers even. On the framework of the forum, we plan to make a performance with the participation of anthology contributors, with participation of Ukrainian writers from the East. And this will be a performance about a situation of Ukrainian hostages, Ukrainian prisoners in the occupied territories, and this will be performance addressed not maybe to Ukrainian people, but to maybe our foreign visitors who can contribute to making pressure upon Russian Federation, upon Putin, and request him to release Ukrainian hostages and prisoners, because our efforts proved to be insufficient to liberate them from Russian imprisonment. And we hope that this performance will be shown not just in Ukraine, but somewhere else also. This project was supported by International Renaissance Foundation, and we approached to several charity foundations, but only Renaissance Foundation expressed its interest in supporting publication. Frankly speaking, many people who hear the word Donbas, even without Ukrainian Donbas, when they hear Donbas, they try to keep not involved into all those affairs. Here you see our partners, 5 TV channel, Espresso TV channel, DOTB TV channel, who have broadcasting in occupied territories. These are not just occasional partners. These are representatives of publishing houses and media organizations which contribute much to pro-Ukrainian work. And we have a lot of formats for cooperation with all those supporters. On Radio Liberty, they have such a program, Donbas Realities. They meet with Donbas writers, and they allow those writers to read extracts from their works, and thus they represent those books, those stories, that literature on Radio Liberty. With this, I would like to give the floor to Serhiy Zhadan. Good afternoon, dear friends. I would like to add a couple of words. This anthology is very topical on the one hand. On the other hand, it's very special, to some extent unique project. In this anthology, there won't be, there would be no oligarchs, there would be no depressive miners, there would be no massive protests. But instead there will be Ukrainian word, Ukrainian literature, and it will show Donbas, which is not so well known and which is tried not to be noticed by many people. The discussion which was mentioned by my colleague, it causes a very disputable reaction. If you do not wish to hear about Donbas, okay, it's fine, but you should know about Donbas, and you should know Donbas, while now Donbas remains some terra incognita, the unknown topic, and a lot of people share cliches, share stereotypes about Donbas, and which quite often conflict with each other and suggest that there is no logic in them. But Donbas is a region of contrast, but we should not be afraid with this fact. We should know about that contrast, and to criticize Donbas based on objective grounds. So we hope that our anthology will demonstrate different Donbas region. And not so many people do know that Donbas is a part of Ukraine, and there are a lot of good Ukrainian writers who origin from Donbas, like Sosura, like Stus, like Holoborodka. These are writers which are studied at school by pupils, but they are known, they are not widely known. But when we speak about Donbas, we mention mostly often oligarchs like Akhmetov. It should not be like this. I think that this project should be a first step towards recognizing diverse Donbas, and why this anthology is a topical publication. Some 2-3 years ago, such anthology won't be possible because there were revolutionary actions, then combat activities. Actually, it should be published. It had to be published long ago, before the war and revolution, but nevertheless, it's now proper time to publish it. And I believe it should be the first anthology representing different Ukrainian regions. Politicians should not lie. The authors cannot lie because they do not have political supporters or voters. They have just readers who choose to read this or that good author. And that's why we think that from this cultural point of view, the anthology will be beneficial and rewarding and attract attention from people in Donbas and in other regions. With this, I would like to thank to all my colleagues who contributed a lot of time, a lot of effort, who survived through the minutes of desperation, and who worked hard to make this book possible. And I'm grateful also to our partners. Unfortunately, not all the foundations are ready to contribute to the projects related to Ukrainian East. That's why we are grateful so much to our supporters. And actually, I would like to thank to this Ukrainian Crisis Media Center. Once a month, regularly, I appear here in front of the microphone to mention how it's important to go to the East, how it's important to have a dialogue with the East, to meet that people, to speak with them, and to reach positive results together. Thank you. I would like to add a couple of words from our Legenda publishing house. I think that that's a big success, a big luck that the authors of the project and our publishing house found each other. We are very young publishing house. We have posted our Facebook on the Facebook page on July 7th, and but this does not mean that we had not been existent before that date. On the one hand, we existed as a publication. On the other hand, we dealt with several projects in parallel with anthology. We worked on other publications, on Stepan Protyuk novel, about 1970s, about Russian psychiatric counteraction to political opponents. I think that this publication is important and unique. Why it is unique for us? We wish to be a publication of contemporary Ukrainian literature, while the anthology comprises not just contemporary pieces, but and not only prose, but also poetry. So this goes beyond our scope and our niche. But due to this genre variety, it is very interesting, and there is a very good grounds for unity. By the way, in the anthology, you will find Russian language authors, but despite the Russian language, they are representatives of Ukrainian culture because they associate themselves or associated themselves during life with Ukraine. Since we represent different generations, we have living authors and we have post-mortal authors. That's why when I say who associated themselves with Ukraine, I mean those who has gone. The geography is also very interesting. We start our anthology with those who now live in different Ukrainian lands with representatives from diaspora. In anthology is also very interesting in this aspect too. This is one of the publications which objectively underscores that Ukrainian diaspora is a broad group of people coming not from Western Ukrainian lands, but also from the east of Ukraine. And about the last pages of the anthology, it represents foreign authors who devoted their works to Donbas, who identified themselves for some time with Donbas problems. I won't describe their creative work now, but in anthology you will see what I mean. Very soon it will become available in the bookstores. Speaking broadly about Poroda Anthology and Legenda Publishing House, for us this is an important step because we went beyond the frames of our concept, but the publication of this multi-genre book allows us to draw attention to the authors which will appear among our publications further. I think that's a good step to publicize of new authors who deserve to be publicized. I would like to thank to Mr. Ivan Zuba, to Professor Ivan Zuba, because he wrote fundamental foreword, made very good research about this specificities of Donbas authors. For me personally, this anthology is interesting because it represents Donbas and shows Donbas not as a region with special needs, but as a region with a normal Ukrainian literature process, with the region with a normal Ukrainian cultural process. I think this emphasis of the on the regularity of Donbas in general, in mainstream of Ukrainian culture. This is what we need, drastically need today. I also would like to thank to you who decided to attend this presentation, and I would like to promise that we won't stop on these publications. We have many projects in our pipeline, and the fact that we are very young publishing house does not mean that our portfolio is empty. Our portfolio of projects is rather heavy. And I would like to congratulate you and us with this start.
I will be brief. I would like to say about the name of the anthology, Poroda. This name is ambivalent. From one side, Poroda is that is not really costly in extractive industry, but we may say that if we are speaking in terms of people, these are the best people. So there are two aspects of this name, and this is the state. These people are now those who fled from Donetsk and Luhansk regions. From one side, some people believe that they are bad, but from the other side, maybe they are the best part of what was there in these lands. And also, I would like to say about the structure of anthology. And Zuba, in the foreword, named this anthology the hybrid one, and this is correct definition. There is a strict structure. The first part, these are classic authors, those who are present in the canon of our literature. Next, the body is the modern authors that went from Lugansk and Donetsk regions. We want to support these authors and to popularize them. And the third part is the view from outside, those people who live abroad and who are interested in the problems of Donbas and who want to highlight Donbas. So this is an interesting view, and I believe this last part of the book, it will be really interesting to read. So now we have time for questions, but I would like to say that this anthology, and maybe that was not the aim of those who made it, but it became anti-Soviet. This is called normality, maybe. So first 100 pages, you may read them. So this is anti-Soviet part, and if you didn't read Ivan Svetlichny poetry, I believe that this, for me, it was real celebration to read this poetry. So his voice is quiet, but the poetry is really great, and he is a real fighter, the person who is ready to fight for the values, who rested in the camps and continued to be himself. And there are many people like this there. Thank you. Now the questions. Please introduce yourself and then ask questions. Good afternoon, Serhiy Zhadan of Hromadske Radio. I have a question about literary process in Donbas, about the literary process that is connected to the conflict. A lot of people fled Donbas, and now they represent Donbas as the authors of Donbas, and before this they presented themselves as Ukrainian writers. And I have a question about the fact that the Donetsk and Luhansk throughout tens of years they were an important part of literary process of Ukraine, and this will be emphasized in the book. But so there was maybe some gap in the literary process in the occupied territories. It is difficult to speak about occupied territories. We do not know what is going on there, so who writes and about what they write. But we have some people we know. They stayed in occupied territories. They continue to write in Ukrainian. Some write in Russian. And these people, they have pro-Ukrainian views. I don't believe that occupation can really make a gap in the process. It can be in some organizational things, but people didn't stop to write. So we believe that this process continues, and here in Ukraine, a lot of people write in Ukrainian and in Russian, and for people, literature is really important, and the people write things. So for half an hour, we try to convince that Donbas is in many components is the same region as Slobozhanщина, or Central Ukraine, or Western Ukraine. So the same processes are ongoing. They have the same problems, the same positive or negative things. There are positive things, but people not often pay attention to them. Good afternoon, Geruslesya, Kiev Mogila Academy. Tell us, please, about the number of authors, women authors, and what about gender issue? Did you pay attention to it? Thank you for your question. We didn't pay attention to gender issue, but there are women among classic authors and among modern writers. Stashkina, Svetlana Zagotova, Luba Yakimchuk. So Alina Svinsitska, we believe that about 40–45%. So the figure is like this. So I would like to add, I was asked about the proportion of texts were printed to not printed, 61%, and there was one exception for the Irina Razdobudka novel, an abstract of novel about John Hughes. And I would like to make an announcement, and I would like to thank our colleagues from Ukraine Magazine who will publish this in the new edition, and you will know about what Irina wrote about, because we do not know what publishing house will print it, so you will be the first readers of this novel. Next question, please. Radislava Chekosheva, Renaissance Foundation. In the context of events that are ongoing in the country, they speak about locality and social and normative culture in civil education, and what is the role of the anthology? What is the role of the anthology in the educational process? And the authors, maybe they didn't want to teach people something, to educate them, but my personal view, this is a project that addresses society. This is not a project that addresses some philology students or literature faculty students. So this book will be of use of culturologists and Ukrainian philosophers and the representatives of humanitarian field who never visited the East, but they spread some stereotypes, some politically motivated things based on their views that are not supported by something. So as for me, this book was not written in Austrian general staff. This is just very versatile book. It shows that we have diversity, and this is our richness, and we should know our diversity in order to have the right and ability to be competent while speaking about Donbas, about Donetsk, about Luhansk. And I really hope that when this book will be in the universities, it will find its audience, and people will pay attention to it. And we will do our best in order to promote this book. The authors that contributed to this book, the authors that are represented there, we want them to be present in our social and cultural field, to speak the language of culture, not the language of politics. Because this political speech, this is a different area, and we want to speak in a cultural field. So this anthology has also a symbolic meaning, and in historical prospects, it will increase, and this is of importance as well. Do you have questions? Igor Zuts, Donetsk newspaper. I have a question to each of you. What things impressed you the most as you represented yourself there, and also about the old guard? Serhiy said about people who are under occupation and continue to write, and I also communicate with those wonderful authors, poets, old guard who continue to write, and when I say I can publish your works, he said, let's do it later when our lives are not under threat anymore, because these are elderly people, and we know that there were some cases concerning journalists, and maybe we should plan it in the future. So I agree with you completely. When we speak about our compatriots who stayed in occupied territories, of course, we should be cautious in order not to harm. And even now, we do not say everything we wanted to. There are a lot of stories. And after our victory, we will be able to voice this. And when this war ends and we will have a control over the border, then those authors who live in those territories, they will also be able to contribute to our work. So this anthology, we have several tens of authors who are my favorite. These are Stus, the poet, who are always with me, and Svetlichny, mentioned by Stanislav, or Ivan Mikhailovich. So this is not just a man from the manual or anthology, but this is a very important voice, Andiyevska or Sesura, who is one of the most important poets for me. So personally, for me, these voices are really close for me. And also Volodya Rafenko, Lyuba Yakimchuk, Alexei Chupach, Bilich, Solovets, these are important voices for me. They are always with me. So it is very difficult to specify who impressed me the most. It is really difficult for me to say. So a lot of the sources I knew, the majority of the authors. It's not about impressiveness. There should be quality texts. And I believe that these authors that were selected are really the best. So maybe the foreword was the most impressive for me. So when we communicated with our colleagues, with Mr. Bilavsky and the publisher from Donetsk, who is now outside of Ukraine, and together with Mikita, they collected this anthology, and I said that I will participate only in one case if I will be equally remote from my personal likes. So in order that the best authors would be really represented, and also we had a board, editorial board, and they checked the quality of the texts, and they provided quality work, and half of this anthology are the people you lived the majority of your life, not only with the text, but people you communicated with, heard poetry on the bank of the Kalmius, and participated in many interesting events together. And what can be the assessment? So I believe and hope that these texts, that they so it's not like home task to read from page 6 to page 11. So a long road to Japan, for example, not to Russia. If I had a long way ahead of me, so I would take this book to read it on my trip, because it is really interesting. So the principle, we selected the texts. In the majority of cases, we sent to the authors the letters, and we asked for text for this anthology, and we said that this will be the anthology, the representation of authors of Donbas, and we ask for most sacred texts that authors believe that these texts are really important for them. So I believe that this principle of selection says for itself. Do you have other questions?
I'm Elena Garmash. I wish to ask hypothetically whether you plan to have presentations abroad, because you mentioned diaspora participants represented in this book, and by the way, for them, I think it will be impossible to order this anthology via Amazon. So now I have two questions. Whether you will have presentations of the anthology abroad, and how it will be possible to order this book via internet. I will open a door to the kitchen of our project. You may understand that we resolve the problems in turn of arrival. Now, by this moment, it was important to send the anthology to print shop. Now we have started contacts with our Polish colleagues about possible promo action in Poland, and there may be several extracts published in Polish magazines, and then having got the response from readers in Poland, we will understand whether we should plan further distribution of this book abroad. We have some volunteers for translation of this book into Polish language. Also, we have ideas that this might be interesting in Czech Republic, and I believe that this book will inevitably start its travel around Europe, irrespectively, without us or with us. I think that there were true authors who worked on the anthology. These were all good professionals, and finally this book might has a good chances to attract attention of translators. As for distribution, I hope that by the end of August, on Legenda Publishing House, you will have an option to order this book. This will allow the publishers to understand the real circulation, because I think 1,000 will be sold at the forum only. About the authors who are not with us anymore. Sometimes when the copyright allowed us to, we tried to take the best version of the text. If we got, in cases when we got some limited copyright for the limited piece of author's creative work, then we relied on what we had. Further questions? Since there are no further questions, thank you very much for this very interesting presentation. This was very interesting work. I think it will be very interesting to learn about Donbas via this new work. Okay, so let's finish this press conference. Thank you very much.